The Nationals lost 5-2 against the Toronto Blue Jays, but so far through 4 games, the early results have shown that the Nationals, their power has definitely improved, but by how much, and will this continue?
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at BrianClary11 and as well as our show page at LO_Nationals. For all your latest Nationals news and notes, make sure to check us out over on Twitter. And you can find this daily podcast wherever you get your pods, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, and of course the video version over on YouTube. Again, you can look up Locked On Nationals and hit that subscriber button wherever you get your podcasts. A little bit later on in today's show, you've got Game 2 of the Nationals up in Toronto. We'll preview that one as you have got a pretty good pitching matchup with Trevor Williams going up against Jose Barrios, and the Nationals try to look to get back in the win column for just the second time this season. So we'll preview that game a little bit later on. And in the second segment of today's show, Michael Soroka, the Canadian who's just signed with the Washington Nationals, he made his debut last night. You saw him exit in the 6th inning. He actually was looking pretty good as well. And we'll discuss that and kind of get into some different scenarios of what could happen. David Martinez had some good news about Michael Soroka that we'll deliver to you in the second segment of today's program. But I want to start off discussing the power of the Washington Nationals, because this was a big topic of conversation, and this was something that the Nationals addressed this offseason. And so far, the early results for the Nationals, they're showing a pretty positive direction as far as their power goes. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and right now new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That is FanDuel.com. And we get started today again discussing the Nationals' power so far. And so far, again, through the first 4 games, this was one of those things where heading into this season, I thought that this was kind of a Band-Aid fix by the Washington Nationals. And the real reason why I say that is because you bring in Josh Bell, you bring in Nathaniel Lowe, you bring in these veteran guys who do have power, but maybe a little bit over the hill at this point in their career. Early on, right now, it's not really looking like that's the case. In fact, the Nationals, some might even say, through the first 4 games, their power has actually been really impressive, and it's been on display seamlessly by everyone on this Nationals team. If you look at the results right now, the Nationals are number 9 in slug for Major League Baseball, sitting at a .452. They're also tied for 5th in home runs in Major League Baseball with 8 through so far in their first 4 games. This Nationals team, while they haven't really been able to stockpile a bunch of wins up to this point, they have been able to resolve a lot of their issues stemming from this past season. And the main issue from 2024, in my opinion, was that they did not have enough power. That is not looking like the case at this point. Now, it's also only 4 games, but I can't help but notice that the Nationals, they are barreling up the baseball. They are putting the ball in play, and they are also hitting the ball pretty damn hard at this point in time. If you were to kind of take these metrics and look at them from a different angle, you might say to yourself, well, number one, it's only 4 games. Well, also on the flip side of that coin, you have C.J. Abrams, who sent one into right field last night, which was a rocket ship out of Toronto there. That was pretty encouraging to see. And then the very next pitch, you see James Wood, 6'7" kid, 21, 22 years old, go to the opposite way. And I know he went the opposite field yet again, but James Wood hit that ball a mile out of there in Toronto last night. I think that we are all starting to kind of see this turn in direction as far as like these Nationals young hitters go. We all know that James Wood, he's going to have the power, and he'll have that on display for years to come. CJ Abrams, you saw a glimpse of it this past season, having a 2020 year, 20-plus home runs. He's got that potential to do that every single season. And then you also turn to guys like Josh Bell. That's why he's here. He has acknowledged it even before the season, saying that the Nationals brought me here to hit for power, and that's what I'm going to do. He hit a home run over the weekend against the Phillies. Hasn't really done too much other than that because he went 0 for 4 in yesterday's game, but you understand the point. Keibert Ruiz, the power-hitting, switch-hitting catcher, finally kind of bursting out through these first 4 games, hitting 2 home runs over the first 2 series here, and Keibert Ruiz finally looks the part of what we were promised back when the Nationals traded for him. That is the key, in my opinion, here. You all know that Josh Bell, it might take some time for him. The veteran guy, he is a little bit older at this point. You don't really know what to expect for him coming out of that DH spot. Nathaniel Lowe has looked pretty good so far this season. In fact, he's probably been the Nationals' best hitter outside of Keibert Ruiz. But if you get production, especially power production, from guys like Keibert Ruiz, who I certainly was not really expecting a huge turnaround this season, but it certainly seems that way at this point. Those are the early results, and that's what they are showing. So the power has improved, and that is one thing that I think the Nationals and a lot of people in that organization wanted to see. But now looking at the downsides of this offense, and really kind of stemming from last night also, you look at guys like Luis Garcia Jr., 0 for 4. Only a handful of hits so far in his first few games of the season. Dylan Cruz, right now, batting 0, has 10 strikeouts, tied for 3rd most in baseball through your first 4 games. Nathaniel Lowe, someone who has not been a strikeout guy throughout his career, is tied for 8th most in Major League Baseball with 8 strikeouts through his first 4 games. The Nationals are striking out a ton so far. They are 6th in strikeouts so far in baseball. I don't really think that this is going to be an issue long term, but it's certainly something interesting here. Because when you do kind of sell your soul a little bit when it comes to power and really wanting more power, you're going to take big chances on guys like Josh Bell, who will generate some swings and misses and will strike out some. Dylan Cruz, I did not expect him to strike out at the rate that he has so far. He has not shown this part of his game, and I don't think anyone expected that as of right now. Luis Garcia Jr., he added a strikeout in yesterday's game. Paul DeYoung, you knew he was going to strike out. So I think the strikeout numbers are a little bit wacky, and kind of you can spin them the way that you want to see them. I'm not overall too concerned about where the strikeouts are today, but I will say for certain individual cases, like Dylan Cruz at this point, it's hard to ignore it. One thing is for sure about Dylan Cruz is that this guy coming out of the draft was going to be a sure thing, 100% all-in great hitter. We have not seen that up in the bigs at this point. When he got the call up last August, you saw some good portions of his season, but still, there are some things that are going to need to be worked out because as of right now, the way that he has been hitting, or the way that he has not been hitting rather, has been, I'm not going to say really overall that concerning, but he looks lost to the plate. Simple as that. 0 for 15. 0 for 15 with what? 10 strikeouts on the year so far? I don't know what to make of this. Are you concerned? I'm not, but I also think I'm kind of lying to myself a little bit. It's hard to ignore the struggles early on for Dylan Cruz, and I know that we have been talking about this the past 2 days here, but what is going on? He is now if you look at his numbers, over 134 at-bats in the bigs, he's batting below 200. He's got an OPS of 577 and only 3 home runs and 8 RBIs and 13 stolen bases. He's not getting on base. He's not hitting for power. And he just looks lost at this point. If I were to pinpoint an issue right now with Dylan Cruz, I'd probably just say it's a mechanical issue, because if you look at him and the way that he is swinging the bat currently today, I know I say this and I know it's not his intention, but it seems as if that he is just swinging right through the baseball trying to hit for power. And that's not what he is. He has to be a gap-to-gap hitter, and that is where he'll have his bread buttered here in DC. It has not been a good look for Dylan Cruz so far in 2025. But I think tonight it has to get back on the right track. And honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if David Martinez pulls the plug and gives him the night off, clear his head a little bit, work on his mechanics, and maybe see him tomorrow during the day game. And if he certainly goes 0 for tonight and plays in the game, I would expect a day off for him tomorrow and see what happens. Maybe you have Jose Tena out there and left field, who knows at this point in time, or Alex Call rather, and see what happens. Because at this point, it has not been a good season debut for Dylan Cruz, but it's going to have some time to turn around. And with a 3-hit night tonight, his numbers could look pretty good. So you're lucky it's early on in the season, but right now, through his first 15 at-bats, the guy looks lost. And it's a little discouraging, but it's a long season ahead. You could be talking about in a few months from now, a 6-WAR player that you may not even seen coming. So Dylan Cruz has the potential, and I'm sure he will turn around. But man, at this point, it is a tough go for it with his approach at the plate. So thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Next, let's talk about Michael Soroka making his debut for the Washington Nationals, and it went well, and then it didn't. We'll talk about that after we tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. And March Madness, it is here, and the Final Four is also here. And FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. And I've got my eye on one underdog this weekend. I have got Florida beating Auburn. And yes, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. And with tournament games happening almost every single day this weekend, there's always something exciting to bet on. And the FanDuel app is so simple to use. And when I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around. So I've got Florida and Duke in the championship, and stay tuned because we'll have that preview for you right here on Locked On Sports today. But when you go to FanDuel, you got to visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Again, that is FanDuel.com, and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, check us out over on YouTube. Again, just search Locked On Nationals, and that is where you'll find your daily video coverage of the Washington Nationals. So before we get into Soroka's exit, let's talk about his first start here, because if you are not aware, Soroka did exit last night with what seems to be a relatively minor injury that we'll talk about later on in this segment. But in his first start in basically almost a year, Michael Soroka looked pretty good, in my opinion. 5 innings pitched, 5 hits, 4 earned runs, which wasn't great, only 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, and had 80 pitches going into the 6th inning of last night's contest. This was one of those things where if Michael Soroka can kind of stay consistent, stay a little bit even-keeled, then you will have some success with him this year. We talked about yesterday kind of not really expecting him to go deep into games early on this season. But when you have 80 pitches through 5 innings, you're going to go into the 6th inning, especially the way that this bullpen has been used and worked over the past few days against the Philadelphia Phillies. But Soroka, I thought he looked really good. Again, having his solid command there, having instances where in the first inning, 3 up, 3 down, I thought he looked really good in that first inning, and that was probably his best and most efficient inning before all said was done there. But looking at it in full, and kind of just from a 30,000-foot view here, he threw 57 strikes out of his 83 pitches. Like, he was pounding the zone for someone who last year did walk a good chunk of guys. And at times this spring, you saw him walk a good chunk of guys as well. But Soroka did kind of click it back into place. While he did, yes, give up those 4 earned runs, there were at times, though, where you felt pretty good about where Soroka was. Andres Jimenez hit that home run in the second inning, and that was obviously a tough go for it. But then you had the Vladdy double in the third that made it 2-0, and things started to pile up there for Soroka. But overall, for all things considered here with Soroka, you have to feel encouraged about where he is today. I think that with where he is, you would like to see him be that innings eater for this team. Someone who, when he was healthy, had good command. Someone who also, not even to mention, was a good all-star caliber pitcher. I don't know if that's going to be the guy that the Nationals will be getting. But if you can kind of get that innings eater in the back end of your rotation, you'll take that any day of the week. And I think that's where Soroka stands today. Like, if you could expect him to be that innings eater and be that Patrick Corbin, except hopefully better results over these past few years, you're in a good spot. Now let's get into the injury, because this was the big concern. Soroka left the game in the 6th inning as you saw him kind of clench his fist a little bit after 3 pitches, I believe, in that 6th inning. And you saw him clench his fist, and we all know that feeling as he walks towards Keibert Ruiz. Everyone knew what they were thinking. Everyone was like, oh my God, he may have just blown out his arm. It did not look good. You had Paul Lassard, the Nationals head training staff. They came out, running it out with Davey. And at that exact moment, all of Nationals Twitter was blowing up. You were texting your friends being like, what do we do? What is going on? It seems as if Soroka has really seriously hurt himself at this point. And that was kind of the look that everyone was giving their buddies around them in their group chat, whatever it was. Well, good news is after the game, David Martinez discussed his injury, and he basically described it as a bicep cramp, and it seems to be minor at this point, and they did call it minor, in fact. So that is a great, great story, because up to that point, I was thinking it was something pretty serious and that we would not be seeing Soroka pitch for quite some time. But that's not going to be the case. It's a bicep cramp, and we'll see how it goes. But I think in this scenario, though, it did kind of get me thinking a little bit with the Nationals. Let's say a starter goes down at this point with where they are. Is it going to be Brad Lord being that starting pitcher who comes in and becomes part of this rotation right away? Because obviously before the season started, it would have been DJ Hers. And I know I mentioned DJ Hers, so some of you out there may be upset that I mentioned him there. But that's not the case anymore. He's on long-term IL. Who knows what's going to be happening with him? It seems as if that it could be a pretty serious elbow injury for Hers. So we'll have that updates as they come. But after that, who is it? It was supposed to be Brad Lord. He made the major league staff, and he pitched last night, 1 inning, 0 earned runs, gave up that hit there to close out the game in the 8th inning. So is it going to be him if Soroka can't make the next start? Do they call up Jackson Rutledge and have him come in and be a starter yet again? Do they go with an opener and Brad Lord is just going to be that guy to go 3 innings pitch? They call up Jackson Rutledge and he goes another 3 innings and they kind of partner that tandem there. You have to wonder, because the Nationals, you don't really have that many other options. The only other healthy option that you've got is Shino. That's it. The lefty from Japan. And you saw the way that he looked in spring training. It seems as if the Nationals aren't really too high on him going into the season. They want to see him kind of get stretched out in AAA. So it's got to be Brad Lord at this point. And I think with where the Nationals are, you kind of have to think to yourself, like, the starting depth that we had, and that a lot of us were just harping on all offseason long, including myself, you kind of look around and go, where has it gone? Because other than that, you got like Andrew Alvarez. I saw someone throw out there Travis Sikora. It ain't happening. He's not going to be making his debut in April of 2025. He might make his debut in 2026 early on. We'll see. But with where the Nats are, their pitching depth has kind of gone in the wind at this point. So it's something that I did think about. And if Soroka can't make his next start for whatever reason, which who knows what will happen, they're going to be monitoring the situation, but it does seem like it's going to be a minor injury. It makes you think, who do they go to? It's probably Brad Lord, but even then, you're going to be losing one of your bullpen guys, and they think highly of Brad Lord. So who knows what the Nationals will be doing moving forward. But thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Now, let's get into a Trevor Williams pre-game debut for the Washington Nationals in 2025. We'll discuss his start after we tell you about our friends over at Supply House and get the supplies that you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. And their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order at supplyhouse.com. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And again, if you haven't done so, check us out over on Twitter at Locked On Nationals. So Trevor Williams makes his 2025 debut tonight against the Toronto Blue Jays. And of course, a lot of people out there are thinking this in the back of their head. Will he be able to redo what he did in 2024? If you remember last year, Trevor Williams was really good. Like, he was probably your Nationals' best pitcher. He had a 2 ERA in 13 starts last year. And again, limited opportunities there. He did get hurt, was put on like a 60-day IL, missed a couple of months there. But in the short stint that he had with the Nats, he was really good. And he was good enough to be brought back on a 2-year deal. He considers this area home now. And I kind of have a weird feeling that Trevor Williams is going to have another similar year to what he did in 2024. Like, I'm not saying that he's going to have like some 2 ERA and a 104 whip, and you're talking about someone who's like the front line of this rotation. But I do think that he's not going to be the 2023 version of Trevor Williams, where he had an ERA in the 5s. He was getting rocked every 5 days. I don't think that's going to be the case. I actually have pretty decent expectations when it comes to Trevor Williams now. And I've always said this, and I think it's kind of frustrated some people kind of looking at it, but I've always considered him to be like your fireman. And the fireman that comes out of the bullpen, eats you some innings, and puts out the fire. Kind of the role that Brad Lord is in now. But Trevor Williams has proven me wrong. And so far in spring training, he looked pretty good in his 5 starts that he made. I mean, he looked impressive, didn't really give up the long ball, which has haunted him at times in his career. And only 1 home run this spring training in his 5 appearances. Last year, did not give up the home run ball either. So maybe Trevor Williams has just kind of found it here in DC. And that's very possible. So you got him making his debut tonight, but Jose Berrios on the other side of the rubber for the Toronto Blue Jays. This is going to be one of those games where he's already made 1 start. got rocked against the Orioles in that one start, but he's a really good pitcher. He's got the stuff. You all know the name, former All-Star back in the day. Jose Barrios is going to be a really interesting kind of watch for this Blue Jays team so far in the season. In 2024, he had a 3.60 ERA in 32 starts. Overall, though, a lot better than what the numbers indicate over the years. Back with the Twins back in the day, this guy was a legit number one starting pitcher, in my opinion. Always had the potential to take that step up, has not done so just yet. But looking at the matchups and kind of where the Nationals stand against Barrios, you really don't have many opportunities against him in years past. Like, you've got a couple of guys like CJ Abrams, who is 1 for 3. You've got Riley Adams, the catcher, who has had 2 at-bats against him. That's it. Other than that, Ahmed Rosario is the only one, and he has not had any luck against him. So I can tell you this, Luis Garcia Jr., he's going to be in the lineup tonight, and it's not going to be like you saw on Saturday with Rosario filling in for Garcia there. So this will be one of those interesting matchups to watch. But again, the beauty of baseball is that they get to go every single night. So the Nationals and Dylan Cruz, they've got an opportunity to really turn things around tonight. So thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.